Today's guest is as close to a smart manufacturing expert as one can be. For over 2.5 decades, Mike Nager has held multiple positions in operations, sales, marketing, program management in prestigious organizations like Phoenix Contact, Maersk Connect, and Fesa Didactic USA. Literally, he's been living and breathing smart manufacturing and industrial automation. Mike is considered a smart manufacturing top voice in LinkedIn. He's a keynote speaker on Industry 4.0 technologies, and he has been traveling around the world in order to share his best practices on industrial automation, as well as help us fill the skills and awareness gaps that torture the manufacturing world. Ahead of his participation in Industry Tech 2025, held in February 2025 in Athens, Greece, here's what he had to say. Hey Mike, nice seeing you again.
Harris, great pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on your show.
Oh Mike, thank you very much for being here, talk about smart manufacturing today. It's really been a pleasure, and it's an honor for us to have you here. I was thinking of starting a little bit wide and then narrow it down. What do you think?
I think that's a great way to start. Let's do it.
Look, I've just told to the people that watch us in the introduction that you've been traveling around the world as an international automation professional for quite a few years. So would you mind sharing us what kind of trends we have currently around the world in the industrial world?
Yeah, so Harris, I think one of the most important trends is not a technological one, but a political one. So we've all seen the news over the last few years, all the changes that are happening around the world. And what the result is, it seems like it's going to be the end of globalization as we know it, as we've known it for the last 20 or 30 years, meaning that manufacturing is going to be reshored back to places like the United States, Europe, and Canada, Mexico, and other areas that it left in. So I think that's the big backdrop of what's pushing a lot of the excitement around manufacturing, especially in the United States, that really offshored a lot of its production starting in 1990 to places overseas, usually in the Far East, right? So what we call here in the U.S., it's a reshoring effort. So manufacturing operations that were in other parts of the world coming back to America, or if not exactly back to the U.S., to Mexico and to Canada or to Europe and places that are closer by. So that's what really the drive is. The U.S. government has created something called the CHIPS Act. That's specifically to bring semiconductor manufacturing back to the U.S. A lot of the R&D is done in the United States, as you might know, but the manufacturing was offshored many years ago. So these are some of the big drivers.
All right, I understand. And talking about, let's say, getting production back in the US, but okay, maybe it will be Mexico or Latin America or maybe in different countries. What kind of different levels of digital maturity do you witness?
Yeah, so you know, in conjunction with that, Harris, what we find is that manufacturing that left in 1990, when it comes back, it's not going to be the same type of manufacturing. It's not going to be a lot of manual operations, a lot of simple machines. It's going to be highly integrated systems, many autonomous systems. So the manufacturing that comes back is not going to be like our fathers or our grandfathers' manufacturing environment. It's going to be high tech. It doesn't matter what product you're creating. We know that it's going to be a high tech production floor. We know that automation is going to be a huge part of this production. And we know that data, creating data, storing data, transmitting data, and acting upon data is going to be critical for manufacturing operations. We know that for sure.
Mm-hmm. So talking about smart manufacturing technologies, do you think that some of them are more critical to make the jump from a traditional industry to a more, let's say, modern industrial floor?
Yeah, so the enabling technologies, and I like the use of that term because a lot of these technologies were developed outside of the manufacturing industry, but can have great utility and use inside of it. So, think of all the products that we now use that came originally from Silicon Valley or from consumer electronics being used on the manufacturing floor. And again, it's looking at some aspect of data. Either how is this device or this technology collecting data that never could be collected before, or how is it transmitting data in a way that could never be transmitted before, or in the case of artificial intelligence and machine learning, how do you analyze that data in methodologies that were never possible before? So you bring up a great point, Harris, that all these enabling technologies, crunching, creating, manipulating data are going to be a core part of it. Each has a different aspect of importance, and we can talk about that as well.
I understand. Well, it seems to me that, let's say, more traditional economies, don't like to say underdeveloped, I like to say the traditional term, seem to, have a serious problem in infrastructure. In industries like US, apparently this is not an issue, so that's why you focus more on the usage and analysis of the data. Is this correct?
Well, I think it's partially correct. We certainly have a lot of operations in the U.S. that are not exactly cutting edge, right? We have a lot of small, medium-sized businesses, family-owned businesses that work in a niche, have a very small level of business relatively. Think of 5 million or 10 million or 20 million dollars in revenues. So it would not be correct to think that every operation in the U.S. is operating at peak performance like the big guys are. So there's lots of room for improvement here and elsewhere for sure.
All right. Why did the Industrial Society of Automation decide to have a separate division for smart manufacturing and industrial IoT? I mean, this has been part of the, let's say, industrial automation practices for quite some time. Why they decided to separate it and form a separate division about it?
Okay. Well, Harris, you're referring to what we normally call ISA, as you said. It was formerly the Instrument Society of America, but it changed its name to the International Society of Automation to keep up with it. So that I've been a long-time member. I'm a senior member of that organization for over 20 years. So I know a little bit of the history. That organization used to be heavily focused solely on the process industries. So think of oil and gas, food processing, chemical, pharmaceutical. That was where they were making standards and best practices and things of that nature. Recently, the smart manufacturing movement, and with its emphasis on more discrete manufacturing, became so important that the society thought it was very important to capture that and to widen its base of technological standards and activities. So the Smart Manufacturing and IIoT division was born, and I am a member of that, and I help with the monthly podcast that we do over on that platform. So.
Yeah, man, that's really interesting. I've watched most of those. I also participate in some of the some of the monthly meetings. Would you mind sharing how someone can become a member of this division of ISA? And I'm sure we'll put the link somewhere down in the description of this video.
Yeah. So being a longtime member, I should have the URL memorized. I think it's isa.org. But we'll have to double check that.
No, not for that. We'll put the URL. I'm just saying, who is admitted in this division? Can anybody become a member? Do you need to have some kind of?
Yeah, anyone. Yeah. There's no credentials other than an interest in automation and manufacturing and kind of the geeky things of manufacturing and production. If you would like to join the podcast, you don't even have to be a member. We publish the link publicly. You can click on it. There's no pressure to become a member. You can just join on the monthly podcast as a guest, and that is no problem to us. We would welcome you that way as well.
Since I'm a newer member, I have to say that getting a member of the division is not that complicated also, and I think it's less than $150 annually. So it's not a great investment for people that really like what they do for the profession and getting up to speed with all the developments in the industrial and smart manufacturing sector.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There is no additional fee. So once you're a member of ISA, you can join each and any of the divisions that you're interested in for no additional fee. So once you're in, you're in.
Mm-hmm. I've been asking a lot, and it may be a cliche question, but I need to ask it. I'm sorry. Will robots eventually take our jobs?
Okay, that's the big question everyone is asking. So, between robots and artificial intelligence, a lot of people are a little bit leery of this new technology. So let me preface this, by saying in the short term, I don't think we have to worry. In the short term, this technology is going to create far more jobs and job titles than we have currently. So if you take a long view of history and technology, when two new technologies are developed, there is a flux, there is changes in the job market. Jobs that used to exist disappear because that technology has taken over. But as a whole, it's created more job opportunities because of it. So if you were to go back 100 years and describe to someone what modern agriculture and farming and tractors could do, and you didn't need 12 kids out in the fields picking crops, they would look at you and be like, well, what do you do all day? There's nothing there's nothing left. But of course, our days have become busier and busier, in a large part due and caused by technology. So I'll just take the short-term view, and short-term meaning the next 20 years. We don't have to worry about that. We should be excited about the opportunities. In fact, in some of my books I've written, I've said that this technology enables people to do jobs that they were previously unable to do. So think of someone that is physically handicapped in some way, someone that cannot walk or maybe has limited strength in their arms. Well, that person might be a great computer programmer and robot programmer, and now can have a job programming robots to do those manual tasks that were normally limited to just very strong and healthy people. So I think we can be excited about it and optimistic, and look for those opportunities for ourselves and for the next generation.
Yeah, that's very interesting, mate. We've been talking in private conversations about some skill shortage that we observe in the industry today. Do you say that the same skills are missing from the US companies and the other companies around the world? Or let's say if a factory is in Mexico or let's say in California, they may have different needs.
Yeah, so I know the U.S. market the best because that's where I've spent my career, and yes, there is definitely a skills gap is what we call it. So the skills gap's defined by the employers saying, "Oh, I'm having a hard time finding people with this certain skill," and that can vary depending on the manufacturer that's asking. Maybe it's welding skills, robot skills, PLC, programmable logic controller programming skills. There's 100 different skills that might be listed. Part of that was because those skills for the last 30 years were not required en masse in this country because of the previous offshoring of manufacturing. All that work was done not here, but elsewhere. So of course you would have a skill shortage. Why wouldn't you think you would have a skill shortage if you did that for 30 years? What I'm also finding, though, is there's an awareness gap. So as we have young people coming up through the educational system, they're not even aware of the manufacturing industry. They're not even aware of the skills that the manufacturing industry requires and are not following a path towards getting the education and knowledge they need to participate. So it even goes further than just today's skill gaps. We have a awareness gap that is affecting the pipeline of potential talent coming into the field. And that's something I'm very concerned about as well.
All right. So actually that gets us to the next question, which more or less you answered. I was just about to tell the world that you've embarked on a holy crusade about skills gap and awareness gap resolution. And I would just want to ask you whether we can fix the one without attaining to the other. But I guess that that is impossible. One comes together with the other, and one is fixed through the other. Is this correct?
Yeah, that's very correct. Especially if you want to do it at scale. So if you're talking about, the U.S. economy being a very large one, we're talking about millions and tens of millions of jobs and positions that are being discussed in the near term, between today and 10 years from now. When we talk about the shortage of people, we're talking about a shortage of people measured in the millions. So when you try to scale up to that effect, even a large country like the U.S. struggles with it. So, when I talk to a lot of professors and teachers at the university and college level, and I help them create an environment for learning for their students to get that hands-on experience. But then when I look around the classroom, I see, there's 20 seats, but there's only 8 students taking up those 20 seats. So there's a lot of work that we have to do in order to solve this. So it's not an easy problem, Harris, but we're doing our best and trying to do our part.
Just to give a little bit of insights of what happens in the Greek industry, where I've been working most of my time, a little bit also in UK, we experience 2 types of shortage. We have shortage for people that are really experienced or really good in industrial automation, mostly because younger generations don't like the idea of working in a factory. Or they have left Greece to go to more mature economies in order to do the same job, maybe with better conditions and being paid more. Yes, but we also have a shortage in non-skilled jobs, like just like palletizing, or let's say packaging, or boxing and things like this. Is it also the same in UK?
Yeah, so I think the US and the UK market are pretty similar. We share a lot of similarities and thought processes and how our economies are structured. What you're mentioning, Harris, is part of an even bigger picture, and that's the demographic curves that we have as a population. Populations everywhere are growing older, so there's less people at the younger end of the spectrum than there used to be. And that's affecting some of these other, that second group of jobs that you described, the people that are more entry level, just getting started, just going into their first position out of school, perhaps. So, in addition to having that shortage of the skilled labor that you discussed in the first part, yes, I think worldwide we're experiencing this problem at the lower end simply because of the demographic curves. So every region of the world except for one, I believe, is showing population decreases happening in the next 100 years, not increases. So it's one of these big issues far above where my thought process can go, but I certainly see the effects of it.
I mean, this manufacturing reskilling that we're talking about, yes, one may argue that, you know, it's the government job because it has always been. I mean, if you want to do things at scale in a society, you cannot do it alone. You cannot do it through the private sector because, you know, you cannot, let's say, bring all those people together and mobilize them. So, you know, there needs to be, you know, a governmental sector or, let's say, a public organization. But I mean, the way that the things are going and the way that we adopt these new skills, it seems to me that there's no much time. And, you know, if we leave everything, let's say, to the public sector, and no offense to the guys, yes, but I'm just saying that the way things have been proven to go in the past years, it seems to me that will be just very late. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. So I view it as a stool has three legs and makes it very, very stable. So the government is certainly one of those legs. They have the ability to influence and create financial policies and laws and things of that nature at a massive scale that push it. The private sector feels this shortage the most. So growing your own talent has become necessary in the short term to keep people coming in through the door. And then the educational community has to have input from both in order to fulfill the needs of the industry. So, yeah, I think you're right. You know, it's not just going to be the private sector. It's just not going to be the public sector. It's going to be a combination of both working in unison, hopefully.
Well, you've done more than your fair share. I mean, you've published 3 books already on smart manufacturing. I like to call it, one is for professionals, the other for students, the third is for children. But okay. I guess that, you know, anybody can read them and find interest in them. How did you come up with the children's book idea?
Well, this was part of my pondering the awareness gap issue. And, you know, I saw from my own children who are just now finishing their educational careers at university, I saw, you know, not that many years ago, at the age at which they decided what path they were going to go into. And the path was much younger than I think anyone previously thought. Well, not anyone, but me, right? So it was certainly before high school level. They were differentiating and figuring out which path they were going to take. So to introduce manufacturing to very young people, and more specifically to their parents that might not work in the sector, but might hear something on the news and need a little bit of encouragement to learn more about it. That's where the idea came from. I kind of envisioned children and parents and maybe some teachers discovering this world of manufacturing, because in many ways it's hidden. A lot of times it's not, the physical location of a manufacturing operation is not in the middle of the town or the city that you're living in. It's out on the outskirts. It's by the side of the highway. It's a building with no windows. You literally can't see inside that operation. So I like to use the analogy, at least in the US, whenever there's a big construction project in a city where a skyscraper is being built, there's these wooden walls that protect you from the rocks and the machinery that's working on the inside, but they cut out little windows in that wooden wall. So when you're walking by the sidewalk, you can go and you can peek in and see the bulldozers and the cranes and the heavy equipment. And I can't help but think that there's many young people that did that when they were 8 years old, looking in that window and said, I'm going to go into construction. I want to run a big bulldozer like those people inside are. So with my books, I can't very easily go up to a manufacturing place with my saw and saw a hole into the side of their building so that kids can look inside. So I try to do that metaphorically with the books. Write a book that's a window into manufacturing so that they can peer in and be like, oh, there's robots inside there. I want to work with a robot someday. And then when they're 8 years old, follow a path that allows them to do it. So that was kind of my thought process behind the children's book. And that's the most popular book by far thus far. So.
Yeah, I've seen it. There are many people behind it, and I know that you, wherever you go, you carry some copies with you, and then you donate them to the public library. So it's really, it's very kind of you. I have to put it this way because, yeah, I mean, you are thinking about the future of all of us, and I'm wondering, and actually I started wondering after the first time we've spoken, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, like in 10 years from now or 20 years from now, the things that we have in everyday life, how are they going to be produced? Because, even if you have, let's say, an ultra-automated factory, you still need people to run some tasks or do some really, high-quality work, or let's say run and program the engines. And yes, those are nowhere to find. I mean, although we're not that of an industrial country, okay, most of our industries, as you said, they are small to medium. We have many family businesses that can still get the people working around. But as you go further away from, let's say, the center of the cities, then you start having problems. I mean, I have examples of companies that they're literally fighting over, let's say, the seasonal workers of the of the other factory that just 10 kilometers away. So it's definitely an issue for us. And I have to say that your book is published in English. It's also published in Spanish, and we are attempting to publish it also in Greece. Hopefully, it will be on time for next year's exhibition. I was just about to say to the world that we hope that we will be able to have you here in Industry Tech 2025. And hopefully you will be able to be part of our committee for the Smart Manufacturing Competition and Awards.
That would be great. I would love to come to Greece. I love the country. It's been many years since I visited, and I feel neglected because I haven't been able to get to your wonderful country in such a long time. But yes, I would be very honored and happy to come, Harris.
I think we're going to have a very good time, and you will be pleasantly surprised for the level of expertise that you can find here. We have a very strong smart manufacturing startup wave that is rising up. And part of all this, let's say, communication and information I would try to bring out to our audience is for them to get new ideas, but also believe that what they envision and what they try to accomplish fits into this world, and it's not a dream. And I think that by bringing people together that have the same passion for technology can only benefit us, because smart manufacturing and all the issues we discussed, I don't think it's a local problem. I think it's becoming kind of a global problem. And the way that things are going, I think that in the following years, although the production is localized, as you say, we are facing more or less the same problems at scale all around the world, apart maybe the Southeast Asia. They don't have that many issues with that.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's many similarities, many of the same difficulties. I mean, what you alluded to earlier in the conversation about infrastructure, the nice thing is when new technologies are developed and become powerful and market ready, it kind of eliminates the need for some of that infrastructure. So I always think of a story of the U.S. had telephone system for 150 years. We had billions of miles of telephone wires crisscrossing our country so we could communicate. And then less developed countries in other parts of the world had none of that. So there was no infrastructure. But then when wireless technology came out, it's like, oh, just pop up an antenna and get a handy. And now everyone has that communication without that infrastructure. So I think it gives a lot of opportunities when these new ideas come about. Yes, it can be further developed in the U.S., but why not Greece? Why not Mexico? Why not Germany? Why not anywhere? It just takes people with smart minds, motivation, and an entrepreneurial spirit to put it all together. And people like that are everywhere around the world, for sure, including Greece, most definitely. So.
All right, man. Well, thank you very much for this conversation. Looking forward to welcome you in Greece next February. And,
okay. Sounds like a plan, Harris.
Thank you very much.
Sounds like a plan.
It was an honor,
Thank
Mike.
you for the invitation.
Take care. Bye.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.